I certainly hope that Bitcoin will help inject a dose of sanity back into society, where you're judged by what you do and what you and not what you claim that you believe.
I hope Bitcoin injects a dose of sanity to society, as well as reducing the financial incentive towards insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
So yeah. Luke had a question earlier that I know I want to get back to that, I guess, because I don't want to leave him hanging. But you asked about orange pilling and educating folks are into Bitcoin, right?
How does your message fit with non-Bitcoiners? I think that maybe is a little easier to tackle directly.
Oh yeah.
One of the amazing things with Twitter, as for me, has just been how many people message me saying that, oh, I kind of understood Bitcoin, but now I understand it. Or people that say like, wow, I like this blew my mind, and I get it, and I'm going to learn more now. I think for me, one of the reasons I made so many slides is to educate people. I've talked to a lot of folks, real estate folks, stock folks, a lot of typical, 60-40 retirement portfolio folks, some that are professional investors themselves, some that are broke college students with like, $500, some in the developing world with like, $500 total, and some, that, just hire a financial advisor or manager to manage a portfolio. And I think for me, what I've seen that continually hits a chord with people is defining the problem so clearly, so obviously, and make it appear so inevitable that we need a solution. And then basically define the problem well enough that Bitcoin becomes the only obvious solution. So like my first thread that one first went viral instantly, the one that I continue to refer back to for people, is basically just to point out the paradox that everything's getting more affordable and yet prices are going up, and how little sense that makes. And I think when people really ask themselves that question and they view that paradox, I think that's the first moment, at least I've seen it, and I've seen people's eyes light up when they think of that. And it's amazing for me because it's like, okay, now you're getting it. Because we're humans and we have emotions, and fundamentally we think the world works the way it does because it's always worked that way. And that's just not necessarily true. We think prices go up just because that's what they do. I don't have a degree in finance, and I'm sure if I had a degree in finance, I would know or whatever. But prices go up, but they just do. As the economy gets more prosperous, the prices go up or whatever. We come up with these truisms that just aren't true, because our brains like to tell a story and justify why the world is the way it is. Likewise, things become cheaper and more affordable. The marginal cost of energy and prosperity go down. But for most people, and that was my first thread, is basically pushing in that paradox, is that if technology is making everything cheaper, faster, better for more people, why are prices going up? You have more prosperity determined within a ledger, and yet you divide that amount of money by these assets and goods and services. The prices should be going down, yet they're going up. And then, from there, you basically begin to explain how the world has worked for so long, that you have a series of political regimes, and within those regimes, we have monetary ledgers, and some forms of money are better than others. Gold is a better form of money than, say, seashells. Seashells, arguably, depending on the kind of shell, are better than fiat money, or at least in the ancient world they were. And so, basically you have these cycles, and you basically inject a good bit of incentives, game theory, all that, and all of a sudden, your entire view of history changes of the past, and you realize, history is basically this repeating cycle of political regimes and incentive structures rolling over as a function of technology. And so these cycles get faster and faster. An empire, in the ancient world lasted thousands of years. That, a few hundred years ago, you had, colonial empires and dynasties that lasted centuries. And now we're at a point where, for a few decades for this power, a few decades for that power. And, it becomes clear to you, before coming to Bitcoin, the solution that, okay, our problem today is that they're currently at another rollover, and whatever comes next, has to come faster. the technology has to continue to get better if we're going to be reasonable. And therefore the rollovers have to get faster, that the fiat rollovers and the political regime rollovers have to get faster. And it's just an incentive structure. As they get faster, people have less trust in their permanence. And as people have less trust in their permanence, they have more difficulty to rise and more easily can fall. And so it becomes clear that's the problem, that technology is just going to continue to get faster and better. And basically what that means is that as these things diverge, as a function of time, one's ability to keep up with rate of technological change will only become more important. Right now, technology changes really fast. It's hard for 70, 80-year-olds to keep up. Well, frankly, I'm more worried about my generation. When my generation are 50 or 60 years old, it will be just as difficult for them, even though they'll be more prosperous and healthier and everything than the current generation was at that age. The technology will be so much faster when I'm younger than them that it'll be even harder for me to catch. And then their kids will be in their 20s, 30s, or maybe even early 40s. It'll be hard for them to keep up. And this curve is just getting steeper. And so when I really define that problem, and I define it as well as I can, that this curve is only getting steeper. And as that gets steeper, it causes everything else to become faster. And these political regimes have to continue to cycle over. Then it becomes apparent that, okay, we need some form of money that's technologically native, something that is outside the whims of political interests. And therefore, the only way to do that is outside human intervention entirely. It has to be immutable. It has to be fixed because it has to be a given amount, in the same way that the speed of light is a constant, the same way that a meter stick is a constant, or that Kelvin or Celsius are constants. We have to have a network of value, back to the Mona Lisa metaphor. We have to have a clear frame that borders the painting. And we can divide that painting up as much as we want infinitely, but there has to be a frame. And right now we don't have that. And so eventually then you realize, okay, this is an engineering problem. And, then like Tesla and Ford and everyone else, all the engineers of the 20th century, then you eventually begin to realize, okay, Bitcoin is this thing. And so when it comes to educating people about Bitcoin, I think the best way is not to talk about Bitcoin first. I think it's to define the problem. And the problem is basically you can't have humans be in charge of a ledger that the incentive to corrupt said ledger only increases as that ledger becomes more valuable. I mean, it's like a catch-22. It's a paradox. If the ledger is uncorrupted, that ledger becomes more valuable. And if it becomes valuable, the incentive to corrupt it only goes up. And so I think defining that as an essential problem that needs to be solved if the world's going to continue at the rate and the arc that it's going on now, it's like, okay, this is inevitable to come. And that's what Tesla and Ford understood. This is inevitable. We're somehow going to find a way to do it because we have to. And when we do, as Hal Finney said, the only logical conclusion is that upon its creation, as you eloquently put it, it's an invention, but it's also a discovery, mathematical scarcity. I can't do it word for word, but it's a discovery. It can only be done once.
Yeah.
If you were to recreate it, you just make a lesser version of the original. And why trust that? So basically, if it's inevitable and if it's a threat to everything else, going back to my point earlier, then looking at Bitcoin, it's survived 14 years. It appears very likely to be that thing. And if it continues to survive, then everything else is an extremely risky bet against Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Let's see if I remember that one-shot principle on top of my head. Absolute mathematical scarcity achieved by consensus in a sufficiently decentralized distributed network was a discovery rather than an invention. It cannot be discovered again because the very thing discovered was resistance to replicability itself. Yeah, that's the way I put it in the second book, Independence Reimagined. And I'm just awaiting a proof print of the rehash of that book. So I'm putting Sovereignty to Mathematics and Independence Reimagined together as one book. Yeah. So we're re-releasing them here coming within a month, I hope. They will be available.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Looking forward to that. I think there's Captain America's shield on the cover with a Bitcoin B instead of a star.